This one better. Praise God. Okay. As he was leading us and he sang that my mind allowed me to convert this into prayer. I do we convert it into prayer because Sunday evenings like this, when you have slept and you have woken up, then you feel that prayer thing descend like this. Then you just take off like that. Praise God forevermore. So thank God that we're here again and we're discussing today starting a new business. And how many people do business of any kind? Business, you do any kind of business. Okay, that's great. And I know that if you do business of any kind, of course you have your own experience of what it is like to do business and all that. And maybe if you don't do any business, maybe you can career or something like that. Some persons may have the thought of maybe or the desire to start maybe something anytime soon. Right, so I'm sure that whether you are in business already or you have plans, to start something, I'm sure that all the things that we discussed today, will find relevance in some way or the other. Of course, if you look at it in another sense, even if you're a career person, you're still in business, right? One way or the other, it's still that you're in business. Praise God forever. Okay, so just before we dive in, let me remind you of business morning prayers, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. Always a powerful time, right? How many of us have been joining? Always a powerful time, so always remember to join us every Monday morning, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. We're there, and if you're already in transit, you can still plug in and join us. All right, so starting a new business, I think we should first of all read a background scripture, Luke chapter 19, verse 13. Luke 19, verse 13, just to set the background. I'll read from the Young Literals translation. I don't know whether that's what you have. It says, and having called 10 servants of his own, he gave them 10 pounds and said unto them, do business till I come. Praise God. So if you are not doing business, you are disobeying the instruction of the master. He said, do business till I come. That's what occupy till I come actually is do business. Okay? So the principles of financial increase, you obey the law of sowing and reaping, like we know. And then the harvest you want will always be inside the seed that you have. So if you do not consider the seed in your hand, in your quest to a bountiful harvest, you definitely are looking too far. You are looking at the wrong place, in fact. Right? Not just that you are looking too far, you are looking at the wrong place. What you have will always be inside what you have, or what you want will always be inside what you have. Opportunities elude us many times because we are looking too far. Today I'll tell many stories, right? Maybe some of them will be my own personal stories or personal experiences, and then maybe any other story that comes to my mind as we share, because I know that these kind of subjects will always, it will always be important to share stories because, like you say, illustrations are like windows, they allow more light to come into the room. So, for us to understand how that, if you are doing business and we really want to take something, let me backtrack a little bit. Many of us, sometimes, we get involved in an activity, but that activity is not business. We are doing the activity, but that activity is not yet business. And I see it many times because people are doing the activity. The activity of business ought to return something to you, right? But they are putting in something They are putting in something, but it is not returning anything, right? Rather, it keeps taking from them, keeps taking from them, keeps taking from them. And so it's like, sometimes if you look at people who are in a career job, and then they have another side business on the side. If they don't look at it properly, the other business that they are doing on the side that they think is business is actually not business. It's actually a dream of the career job that they are doing. But many times, because we don't analyze these things properly, right? We don't see it as quickly as we should. If that career job was supposed to stop, for instance, and then that person was supposed to do just that business, the person would have seen that this business is really not viable at all. The only reason why this business seems to be thriving is because you are doing this other career job, and this business is actually feeding off, this other thing that you are doing. So many times people are involved in some kind of activity, but that activity in itself is not leading anywhere. It's not bringing in anything, and they're just in that loop. It's like somebody told me, said, the more I work hard, the more I am in debt. Like, how does this happen? It says, it's a true life story. It says, the more I work hard, the more I get more into debt. It says, I'm considering that maybe I should just quit because there's really no point. All right, so today I'm believing God that we'll look at a few things that will be enlightening to us. And I should also say this, when we talk about business, because I said in a certain sense, whether you're in a career or whatever it is, you are in business, right? Yeah. But if you look at it, business as per business, like you're not in any career job or anything like that, so you're purely in business, whether you're self-employed, you're an entrepreneur, whatever it is. Again, I think that many times we are caught out for different things. So maybe not everybody may be caught out for the kind of business that I'm caught out for, and may not be caught out for the kind of thing that maybe another person is caught out for. So I think that understanding must be there. And once we have that understanding, it helps us, right? So, but one thing that I would say is that if you're in business, or if you want to be involved in business, you must be willing to work hard, right? This I've not even begun to list, the points that I want to talk about, right? But that concept, you must just have it at the back of your mind, that you must be willing to work hard. One thing that we will not be able to take away from our experience, even as believers, is that we must put in our hand to the work. That one is a given. You can't escape it, right? There's nothing that would, Paul say, I labor more abundantly than you all, right? But even though you acknowledge that it is the grace of God that was working through him, right? He labored more, right? So if you are going to be in business or whatever it is that you're going to do, you are going to have to labor hard. That's the truth. There's no living soft life and hoping that maybe some good stuff will fall on your head. So that is a given. Now, how do we, get into business, or how do we start a business? If you wanted to start a business, what is it that you need to do, right? Or if you have started a business already and you wanted to look back to ask yourself if you were in the right business, or if you were doing, if you made the right decision, what are the things that you need to take note of? We'll look at a few of them, and then we'll just evaluate ourselves from those points. I think the first thing that you need to do is you need to identify a gap, right? The first thing that you need to do if you wanted to do business or anything is you need to identify a gap. Praise God forevermore. So, identifying a gap. help us. Okay. So identifying a gap means that you need to check what gap is it that my business is going to fill, right? Because some people have solutions for problems that do not exist. Yeah, some people have solutions for problems that do not exist, right? So that means that there is no gap. There's no gap, and if there is no gap, it means that there will be nobody to use the solution that you have. So first of all is that you must identify a gap, right? And how do you identify the gap? The first thing is you need to be open-minded. Let your mind be open. Don't have a closed mind. I mean, as a general rule, let your mind be open. So take for instance, you know, this whole conversation around the new tax law and everything like that. As the whole conversation was going on and people were discussing everything, all the problems, people were posting statuses and saying that by January 1, for grandma's health, we were all laughing, right, about the whole thing. But I was thinking in my mind that there are definitely gaps here. There are definitely gaps in this thing. That there is a problem and everybody is complaining, right? The man who is open-minded will ask himself, are there gaps that the fact that people are even complaining and shouting and saying this thing really means that there is a gap if you look very well, right? Yeah, there definitely is a gap if you look very well. So the first thing is, but if you are not even open-minded, you can't even be open to the gap. Everybody just has this knowledge or so this idea, like, the government is out to injure us, this and that. And once you have that mindset, what happens? Your mind is closed. Right? So it's the same thing when you go to maybe an environment or something, and maybe there can be a business opportunity. But once your mind is closed, you cannot identify a gap. So the first thing is that you must have an open mind. You must have an open mind. Many of the big businesses, even in the world today, many of the things that they do now that we consider to be big business were not things that they set out to do originally. They just kept an open mind, and as they kept an open mind, they saw the opportunities, and then they latched on the opportunities and they took them. So we're saying that for you to even be able to succeed, or for you to be able to have any business that is worthwhile, you must identify a gap. That business in itself must be solving a problem, right? So in the advent of COVID-19, right, what happened is there are many businesses came up. Me in my constituency of the startup world and all of that, that was the time we were saying that you can raise $2 million, $3 million just with PowerPoint presentation. Nothing to just, now, as that was going on, in my mind, many times I would say, this idea that this person has, you just read again in the newspaper, so company raised $15 million. In my mind, I was like, these ideas, maybe it's me that is being, pessimistic in some way, but this idea does not look to me like an idea that can run, like this successfully, raising this amount of money, and then the market is deep enough to accommodate, this kind of money. Because again, you have to think of it that if this person raises this kind of amount of money, he has to generate eventually, right? Generate, multiples of that money. So I would think I'd say like this. But many of those businesses, they ended up folding up, right? Because many of those businesses, what they did is they created solutions. The solutions were beautiful, but there were no gaps. There were no gaps. People were creating solutions for gap in the US. That's, you look at the US economy, you identify a gap. You come to Nigeria, you create a gap. You create a solution. right, and say that this solution is for a future gap. And sometimes you can be ahead of time. It's not, I'll tell you stories, you can be ahead of time, but you cannot be too far ahead of time. You cannot be too far ahead of time, because what will happen is it's not you that will do that business eventually. Maybe it's your children or your grandchildren. Right? But if you are too ahead of time, it's a problem in itself. So identify a gap, and then that gap must be solving a problem. And we said to do that, you need to be open-minded, and then you need to be sensitive to your environment and to the people around you, right? So when you are sensitive to the environment and you are listening to what people are saying, for instance, I was talking about the tax law and everything like that. So I remember that as I used the tax law as an example, because as people were complaining and all of that, I sat down at home one day and I thought, but how about this and this and this and this? So I was sharing with somebody, I was like, can this be a solution to some of the complaints that people were having, about that thing? How that comes is being sensitive to the environment. There's a story told about a salesman who was sent to a place, I don't know whether it was India then or something, who was sent to a place where people did not wear shoes, right? And then he sent back to HQ and said, look, we cannot sell any shoes here because the people here don't wear shoes anyway, so we cannot sell shoes. That was his own report, right? They withdrew him and sent another salesman there. The salesman sent to HQ and said, get ready to send me shiploads of shoes because nobody is wearing shoes here. That means we are going to sell a whole lot of shoes. So same place, right? Different perspective, right, to the issues. So you must be sensitive. Sometimes people look at the environment that we are, and all of that, and they say, this environment, nothing. I say, are you really sure that it's really nothing? I was visiting my wife. I had a meeting like maybe 2 weeks ago. So the meeting was with a white guy. He's an American. So he sat me down and then we were having a conversation. We were trying to get the business with that company. So I was having a conversation with him, and then he told me, he said, oh, you are really young. He said, I'll be 80 this year. I said, oh wow. He said, I've been in Nigeria since 1981 or 1980 something. He told me I did this, I bought this company, this state-owned company, right? I will say if I'm not mentioning the names. I bought this state-owned company, I did this, I did that. I was like, I was very impressed with, the things he has done and all of that. And I was like, telling me that, oh, you don't have plans to run away. I was like, I don't know why you're doing this. Like, because there are many opportunities here. I hope you open your eyes to see it and all of that. Like, look, I've been everywhere in the world. I've been to China, I've been to Europe, I've been to this, I'm American, blah, blah, blah. He said, but the opportunities are here. He said, I see them every day. He said, but your people don't see them, right? So your people are trying to run away to places where everything is already done and everything like that. But again, that doesn't mean that people should not go where they wish, right? But just about perspective, that somebody can be seeing opportunities and then somebody else can be seeing problems. So if you are sensitive to your environment, right, you'll be able to identify when you're sensitive to see the people around you, right? And then still under identifying the gap is you don't have to be pessimistic, rather be optimistic about your environment. And I think we already said that, right? You have to be optimistic, not pessimistic. Sometimes when I hear people say things like, this country, you can never make it in this country. I'm like, this is, that sentence, it's not a sentence on the third party, it's actually a sentence on yourself. What you are actually saying in effect is that I can never make it in this country. Not like nobody else can make it, because people are making it. Yeah, people are making it. Trust me, people are buying houses, people are buying cars, people are starting new companies, people are making progress, right? So it definitely means that you can make it in this country. And sometimes it's not just that. Sometimes people say that you cannot make it genuinely in this country. I'm like, no, People are making it genuinely in this country. Right? Yeah, people are making it genuinely in this country. They are not having to, to cut corners or do anything, right? Yeah. Even though the business environment sometimes may be tough or difficult, but there definitely are people who are making it. And anytime you have that mindset, it always reminds us of that mindset of I'm the only one. Every other person has been killed. That was what the prophet was saying. But there definitely are people. God has people, right? And sometimes if you don't look hard enough, you will not see it. But God has people. So if you are in business already, right, or you are planning to start business, I think you need to look again at the area that you are, that your business area, or you need to look at the area of your business interest and ask yourself, is there really a gap, right? Is there a gap that my business will fill? So if you're able to identify that gap, and it was very interesting, right?
Very interesting.
He saw a gap. What was the gap? He had asked somebody to supply diesel, right, to his house, and then the way the diesel was supplied. Of course, even before then, the gap was that it took 4 days, right, for them to supply the diesel. There was no power and all that. Clear gap. Then we'll talk about that. Then the supply comes, but the way the supply comes, he didn't really like, the whole arrangement and everything. Clear gap, right? And then he said, okay, it was time to go into that gap. And sometimes the gap is not as big, as that. Sometimes it's just a small gap, but it is, absolutely needed. And then you just latch in, and then you begin to, because one thing is obvious: if you identify the gap, is the first thing. If you do every other thing right from there, that business will succeed. That business will succeed. Why do I say so? Because even people who are not children of God, they identify a gap. They follow the other things that they should do duly, and then they succeed in the business. How much more you that has a covenant with God, right? So if you identify the gap and you follow every other thing that you should do, that thing would succeed. The next thing, of course, after identifying the gap, is you need to do brief research. So we're not trying to use very sophisticated terminologies here. If you have identified the gap, right, do a brief research. And what will your research cover, right? Take the identified gap and run it through other people. You have identified this gap. People say that if I discuss my business idea, this brother will steal it. I've been young and now I'm getting old. It is not easy to steal a business idea. Even when you open business idea and give somebody like this, it's a different thing to have a business idea. It's another thing. See, let me tell you something. Even big organizations have stolen business ideas from small people, and they've not been able to run it effectively. There's just something about it, I don't know it yet, but it is not just easy to take somebody's idea and run and go and implement it. An idea is not just what is on paper. When somebody has an idea to start a business, if he writes it down and give it to you, okay, why do they buy companies and bind the management or the founders of the company to remain for maybe a certain period of time? Have they not bought the business? They bought the idea. Because if you just buy that thing like that and leave them, it's just empty can that you bought. It's empty can you bought, right? That many times ideas, they can only survive many times in the vessel that bettered those ideas. It's even the reason why sometimes you see visionary organizations, big, everything, and then maybe the founder dies or the visionary dies or something, and then the business just begins to go down. There is money, they have money, they are doing everything they know to do, but the business is going down. Why is it so? Right? because there's a lot that you need to understand beyond just that idea is documented and you can still try. So we're saying that do a brief research, and we say that the first thing to do a brief research is you need to take that identified gap and run it through others. Why must you run it through others? Because sometimes you can be daydreaming. And it's the truth. People have shared ideas with me before. In my mind, I'm like, bros. Bros. Is this your idea? Is this your lifetime you want to do it, or another lifetime that you will come, right? So you must run these ideas to people so that those people can be like, sounding bags for you to see whether that idea. Hey, don't misunderstand it, or that you can sound your ideas to other people and they tell you that this idea is not good enough or this idea will never fly. It does not mean dead, right? I'll still talk about that. I'm only saying you need to sample, people's thoughts or people's opinion. And if you can, right, seek expert opinion. If you can't seek it. See, when you seek expert opinion, let me tell you something. When the expert tells you that this thing cannot be done because of this or this or this, understand that the expert is not against you. He's only said his own based on his understanding and experience, but it does not mean it cannot be done. Right? I'll say his name. He was former chief economic advisor to one of the presidents in Nigeria. In 2012, I was not there, but one of our other co-founders was with him, and then there was a forum. I wasn't in that meeting, and they ran the idea of what we are currently doing, our current business, and presented it to him. He was sitting on the panel and said, "Tell me about this idea," and then told him about the idea. He said, "Guys, go and look for a job. This idea will never work." Chief economic advisor to the president. He was former board member of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Very experienced, right? He's one of my lecturers today, right? He said this thing will never work. He said if this thing will work, I would have even helped you and spoken to people who will make it, who will buy it. He said, but from where I stand, just go and look for something else to do. The idea has worked, right? In spite of that expert opinion. So I'm saying that sometimes the expert may be wrong, right? But what happens is when the expert tells you, when you seek expert opinion and you see what the expert is saying, what you take from the expert opinion is the expert will help you to know what areas to avoid or what areas to fine-tune. The expert will tell you that this business will never work because of this, this, and this. Then you know what you are up against if you decide that you still want to do this business, right? You then decide that from the expert opinion, for this business to work, I must deal with this, I must deal with this, and I must deal with this. Right? So what happens is it creates it helps you, judge what you are up against. And you know that, okay, if I don't solve this, I don't solve this, I don't solve this, there's no way this business is going to take off. Simple, right? There have been times like that, right? So, and I'm not sure that ours is the only case. There are many other people who are probably succeeding in business today that they told them that this business will never work, or this thing can never be done, right? But once they tell them that this thing can never be done, they don't just sit there and say, it's not agility, it's not strong head that eventually makes it work, right? It is taking that expert opinion and analyzing and saying, if they say this thing cannot work because of this, then I need to do this to counter this, right? It's not just saying, no, this thing can never work. And I know that we are believers, and I know we can pray, right? But trust me, hear that expert opinion too, right? Hear it and then see what you can do against it. And then still under doing your brief research, you need to look out for other possible alternatives or competition or competitors, right? So I've got the idea, right, based on the gap, right, I identified it, and now I'm doing my research. I then need to look, what are the other possible alternatives or competition that I may have, right? So I'm looking at it, and it will be very, very important. I remember some times ago, it was a long time ago, and it's very good to do this research very well. Whether you do this research or you experience it, either ways. I think this was 2015. We had gone for a presentation. I identified a customer. So I said, I told my friend, let us go to this. I spoke to them on phone. We want to sell this thing to you and all of that. And we will not reach the big people, but there was just one small client we could reach and all of that. So we decided to go. And then we drove my friend's car. That one is a story for another day, because as we descended, third pillar bridge like this, I said, Kilo there was no fuel, in the car. That was a story for another day. We just, there's this abandoned filling station, general filling station in Paganda, to the right. If you're descending like that, we just parked the car there, and then we found our way like that. We were suit to and tie and everything. So when we go to this presentation, this is our software, it can do this. If you go to heaven, it can give you all those kind of beautiful stuff. They were listening to us. Two ladies, their dad owned the business. Their dad was an elderly man. They flogged us. After they flogged us, I think the most embarrassing thing that they said was, this thing you people are doing makes no sense. Excel, simple Excel will do this and much more. But what happened is, when we were going, when we left them, and sometimes it's good for God not to expose you too early. Yeah, sometimes it's good, because you would have documented all the things that people will say against you in the future. You would have documented all of them and all of that. Trust me, by the time we had that feedback and we went and refined and did everything, and we wanted to do what Excel could not do, that became like a campaign strategy for us. And when we now went out and said, see, even your Excel, it cannot do this. And sometimes you just need to know what you're up against, right? So you need to know what are the competing products, or what are the competing solutions, what are the alternatives that people have against your solution. Because if you have a business and your business addresses a need, understand that sometimes when people need to spend money, right, they rationalize, right, and then they ask themselves if it is what. Let me give you an example. If you go to maybe a big hotel like Radisson, right, and you are staying in Radisson, and then sometimes you want to eat, and then you order, maybe let's say it's breakfast, let's say it's complimentary breakfast, and you are supposed to go, you are upstairs, you are feeling lazy to go downstairs to take your breakfast, and then they say you can take your breakfast maybe between 6 and 9 or 6 and 10, depending on what the hotel says. Then you ask, then you call room service or you call anybody and say, can you bring the breakfast to my room? They say, yes sir, we can bring the breakfast to your room. It will cost 5,000 to bring it to your room. That's service now. Then you will ask yourself, do I want to pay 5,000 instead of just walking downstairs and eating this meal? You rationalize. At that point, you will then make the decision whether it is worth paying 5,000 so that you can cross your leg in your room and eat the food, or you go down to the restaurant and eat the food. So many times when people want to spend money, they rationalize too. I just use this one as a simple example. So you may have a solution that you think solves a problem, But there can be alternatives, right? There can be alternatives. If your business is selling shoes, and shoes are too expensive, and people have sandals, they probably will wear sandals and say, well, it's okay to wear sandals too, right? So you need to do your brief research and set, identify, after you have identified the gap, you take it through others. If you can seek expert opinion, and then look at what are the possible alternatives and competition. Now, in looking at the possible alternatives and competition, what will happen is you will see if that your gap is worth diving into or not. Right? Back to the story I talked about in the book, right? When he looked at the competition and he saw how the competition did their business, right? He thought about himself, how he would like to be served, and thought, no, there will be many, many people like me, right, who would prefer to be served better and all of that, right? So, the gap was there, and then he had done an analysis of, the competition and what the alternatives were, and he rationalized that, okay, this was something good that he could do. The third thing then you need to do after you have done your research is you need to check if you have what it takes. You need to check. So we said first to identify the gap in simple terms, right? We're not trying to make it complicated, right? Do your brief research, and then the top thing is you need to check if you have what it takes. What does it take to do this business? Right? What does it take? Maybe you are sitting now and you are telling yourself, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start a food business. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start a pharmaceutical store, right? You've identified the gap. In this my area, there is no pharmaceutical store. In this my area, there is no restaurant that people can sit comfortably and eat, right? You've identified the gap, you've done the research and all of that. Then you now need to check if you have what it takes. Do you have the skills? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the personality for this business? Very important. Do you have the skills? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the... As I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about my friend, my very good friend. He came to me and told me, maybe he's listening now online. He's not in Nigeria. He came to me and said, Ola. I said, yes, me and my wife, we have found a business. It's like you need to tune this down, you have to know it. He said, we have found a business. I said, He said, is this me? I just felt, I was facing this, the one business that we were doing and all of that. He said, I found a business. Really, not him found the business, his wife found the business and all that. I said, what's the business? He said, they were going to do farming, right? Him and his wife were going to do farming and all of that. Then he told me about another friend, and I know that guy because, we used to attend the same church. And that guy had helped them identify a place where they can do the animal farming and all of that. They had bought some pigs and everything. They were going to start the farm, and he told me then, this is more than 10 years ago, he told me that, if this pig, we bought this number, if this pig grows, we can sell one for 35,000, we can. I was hoping that maybe the business begins to do, maybe we too are finding a way to do jolly man. So after some weeks of doing the business like that, he came to my house one day and said, we're going to go and close down the farm. Oh God. I said, what happened? Why are you people closing down the farm this early? I thought this business was going to, be something big and all of that. He then told me that, no, that's not how that business works. Right? There is a knowledge about that business that they did not have. That there is something that the people do in those farms. Because, okay, so why did they want to close down the business? I should tell you. The pigs, after many weeks, remained like this UPS. After weeks, remember what I told you at the beginning? You have a business, you have a job. The business is feeding off of the job, but you don't know it, right? It was okay because both of them were working. They were earning salaries, right? And they were putting it into this farm. But this farm was was taking the money and not giving back anything, right? So after many weeks, and the pig remained the same. Oh God. Yeah, I'm laughing because he will be hearing us all right now. Even that day he came back to us, he bought some. He bought some. This me, since I did not contribute to the farm, I did not eat to. I will not lie to you. Yeah, I did not eat because I did not live on But I said that to say that there is the skill, right? The knowledge, sometimes the personality that is required to do that business. Many years ago, I have many stories to tell. My friend, I was trying to save money to start a business. So I was rationalizing. This was long before the ban of Okada in Lagos. So I thought maybe Okada business would be a good business to do like that, because I heard from some of my friends that they were delivering maybe 5,000 a day. That's why I said I was going to do this business, and I found out the gap, the gap it's entered. Did research. There's it was good. I could do this business, but as part of my research still, then there was a guy who was in my office then. He was a more elderly guy, right? But we were working together, we were in the same team. He was doing the business and he had several Okada at that time. He told me he probably had 5 or more Okada at that time. So I went to meet him and said, Ross, I want to do this business, and seeing that you have this thing. He then said, okay, that's fine, you can do this business, you get some money. He then asked me, do you have any police in your contacts? I said, police? Why do I need police to do Okada business? You don't have any police? I said, no, I don't even. The way he said it in Yoruba, oh, no, I don't have. No, I don't have any other family. He said, He said, and the way I'm looking at you, you'll not be able to fight this fight. I said, no, I cannot fight it. He said, you cannot do this business. He said, I said, why, Ross? I'm saving money. I think I'll be able to. He said, no. He said, then they asked me, can you arrest somebody and lock the person up for 5 days? I said, he said, you don't have the temperament for this business. Leave this business for us. You don't have the mind to do this business. And that's the truth, right? There are businesses that you need to check. Do you have the skills? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the temperament to do that business? Right? You want to do Okada business, you cannot arrest somebody. What are you doing? You can't do that business. Because the first week they will deliver, the next week story will enter, right? And you may even end up looking for your Okada, anywhere else. So there are different kinds of businesses. For instance, we work with downstream oil guys at 4 stations. And sometimes when I hear there are problems, even me, I'm asking myself, if I have all the money in the world, will I invest in this business? Because I'm thinking that what it takes to succeed in this business, with all that I know about this business, I don't know whether I have the temperament for that business, right? Because of the way the business is done. So After you have identified the gap, we said, and you have done your research, check. If you have the skills, if you have the knowledge, and if you have the personality. Do you have the right source of continuous information? Check. Do you have the right source of continuous information? Information, is power in business sometimes, right? Yes. If you have information, it can be the difference between this business and the next business. Just information. Before, I think it was just a few years back, before this government came into power and all of that, under the previous government, before FX became a whole big deal and everything, I was doing an executive program at Lagos Business School. So when I was doing that business, because sometimes information, if you don't have certain information, you'll be wondering, and I need to be able to say this in a coded way, right? Because this is public information. Okay, so I was then talking with one of my colleagues, who is a very big business guy. If I mention his names, probably some people will know him. He's in technology business. So while we were having that conversation and all of that, he said some things that were interesting. So later, I went to see him in his office, after school, we had intensive week, I went to see him. And then I got to find out that this, my friend, had a BDC license. So now, supposing you are in the same business with this guy, follow very well. You are sourcing FX from the bank at a certain rate. He has BDC license. He's collecting FX by allocation from CBN. Maybe then you are getting at 700 and something. Maybe he was getting from CBN at 4,000. Let us say that both of us were selling cameras. And he was importing cameras, whatever the cost of the camera. He was importing with leverage of FX sourced with BDC license. You are importing with FX sourced from the bank. Before you people start the business, it's already 300 naira, right? He already has 300 naira per dollar margin ahead of you. When the goods come, and let's say for the sake of argument, that thing costs $1,000, right? So its cost, let's just for the sake of argument, is 400,000 naira. Your own cost is 700,000 naira. You are selling at 710,000, 10,000 naira profit, right? 10,000 naira margin, and you are struggling because 10,000 is not able to meet your own. He's selling at 710 too. But he's balling now, right? And if you were flexing muscle with him, he probably drop it to 700, which is your own cost price, right? So, information can be a real big deal. When I was young, one of the first businesses that I wanted to start, I lived in Zaire. So one day I went to the market, I am tiger nuts. So they used to sell tiger nuts within I lived in the barracks. They used to sell within our area for 1 naira, they tied it inside nylon and everything. And it was small like this. So that day I went to one place in the market and I saw another place they were selling that tiger nut. It was big like this for 1 naira. Then my mind began to rationalize. I probably was in my phone and I said, if I buy 1 naira iron, I probably can break it into 2 and sell it for 2. So I got money, I went all the way, it was a very far distance. I went to buy, this aya so that I can, repackage it and resell it. The good thing is that the woman that used to sell aya in our own place, this tiger nuts in our own place, the thing was not done like this one that I had seen. This one was well coated with sugar and children would like it and all of that. So there was information asymmetry. I had information on one place, right, that the other children did not know. It would take some, me walking some distance to get there. But as long as they did not know that there was a place that they could buy that tiger nut big like this for £1, then I could go buy it and tie it, and God forgive me. They say, how did I make it? I say, I made it out of like that. I say, how did you make it? Say, no, you just put it, you put sugar. If you buy it will not work. It will not work. If you pour your mommy sugar inside that, it will not be coated, right? But again, I didn't want to tell them my trade secret at that time. So that's it. Sometimes it's information, right? So you say check if you have what it takes. If you have the skills, the knowledge, the personality, it's very important. If you want to succeed in any business, then we say if you have the right source of continuous information, do you have the contacts, the connection, or the leverage, right? In the case that I talked about the BBC license, for instance, it's a leverage. He wasn't doing anything illegal. I hope you know, right? It was leverage. So check if you want to do this business. Do you have the connection? Do you have the contacts? Do you have the leverage to do this business, right? A friend of mine, I was talking to him, he was experiencing some difficulty in his business, and we were talking. He's a doctor, but he was doing pharmaceutical business. He had this. So he was talking to me and all that. And after we analyzed the business, drug business and all of that, he didn't have leverage in that business. Even though he was a core professional, he didn't have leverage in that business. There are people in that business who have leverage, right? That's why sometimes it's not enough to have money and just jump into a business, right? Sometimes there's something you need to leverage. Sometimes it's contacts you need to have, right? For instance, if I had that supplier, that means I had contacts, right? And if you offer a kind of, or you plan to offer a kind of service and all of that, and there is already an off-taker for that service, that's already some kind of leverage that you have, right? So while you are preparing to start that business or to do that stuff, and other people who want to do that business with you are hoping that when they have prepared and everything, they will now come and be pitching that business, you already have that leverage, right? So ensure that you have it, and then check if you have what it takes. The last point under that is you need to check if you have the funding or the source of funding. I know funding is a big issue. Why? Anytime you ask people about business and all of that and say, what is the biggest challenge that you have now? People say it's funding. If only I had more money, I would have done more like this. Sometimes it's not more money. It's not more money. Trust me. But if someone is telling you it is not more money, it's difficult for you to hear it when money is part of the problem. Because money tends to magnify itself above every other thing in business. Money tends to magnify itself above every other. I'll tell you something, and my wife will know this. I think it was maybe 2019 or something like that. Then we were really, trying to pick up our business, trying to just make things happen and all of that. But we had some difficulty. We had not reached the point where the whole thing was making sense like that. So we were supposed to go to YC. So we qualified to be in the YC interview. YC is just like a tech startup and accelerator program in the United States. So we qualified to go to interview in YC and all of that. And at that time, all our hope was not in Christ, it was in YC. That if only YC took us and they gave us this money that we're looking for, we go blow. And that was all that is in. So I had all my plans figured out and all of that. And the good thing is that during the acceleration program, we're going to be in the US and all of that. So I planned my wife, how we were going to move to the US, everything perfect, arranged. Then we go to San Jose, and then we had the interview and everything. See, on paper, we had mapped out how to spend the money, all the money that we're going to collect. Because you're sure that we'll collect this money, you understand? Guarantee. We had mapped it out, everything. My brethren, I was sleeping around 5 p.m. that day, because Nigeria is like, we're 7 hours ahead of California. So I was sleeping because 5 p.m. was maybe like 12 midnight in Nigeria. My body was still adjusting to timelines. My friend then said, Ola, if you win, they'll call you. If you don't win, they'll send you an email. So I was sleeping. My friend tapped me. I woke up, said, Ola, say, well, me. He said, check your mail. When they say sorrow, I had not opened the mail to see, but the fact that he told me, check your mail, sorrow descended upon descended upon, because in my mind, I'm like, well, done and finished here. Right? There's no money to do any other thing here. How are we going to escape this? So after the incident, my friend then decides, well, me, I'm going somewhere else. I'm not coming straight to Nigeria. So I had to return back to Nigeria, and I will never forget that flight. I was on a Delta flight from JFK to Lagos. That, is a long flight. I can't say this, but that flight was, I thought about all my life, from how I was born, how I got here, why I quit my job, why I ever thought I would make it in this business. I thought about everything. Why was I so optimistic? Why did I ever think that we would just come and make it? And I thought about everything. But we didn't get the money. But we are here. We are still here. Right? So, money has a way of magnifying itself. When we came back and there was no money, he that is down this way no fall down. You are on ground zero. What again are you afraid of? It's true. You can't go lower than zero, right? You just go up. So we took what we had, began to build from there and everything like that. And it became obvious that if we put in more work with the little resources that we had, we could make something. So I'm saying that part of what you need to check is you need to check the funding or your source of funding. If you know that you don't have a lot, you just need to be resourceful, right? You need to be wise in the way that you use your own resources. The way people are using their own resources may not be the way that you are using your own resource, right? It's a simple truth. I'll tell you, some of those times when we went to meetings and all of that, there are many stories, right? There have been many stories. We'll go to, I remember some of the meetings we had, and we were talking with government officials and all of that, and we were having some of those meetings in Abuja, so they will call us and say, come to Abuja, or we want to see you in Abuja on, today is Sunday. We want to see you in Abuja on Tuesday. We'll be like, okay, we'll be there and all of that. They'll say, what flight are you going to? Say, don't worry, we'll be there. You understand? We'll be there. How are you going to do it? It's anybody's business. It's not anybody's business now. So, as we are telling them we'll be there, because you don't know what can happen if you enter night bus on Monday with the hope of getting them. You start the journey from today. We never fail. We are always there. When we get there on Tuesday, we say, you guys are early. That flight, first flight from Lagos, you don't even answer. We don't have business answering that kind of question. The important thing is that we are here. How we got here is not your business. Let's have the conversation, right? Because flight was going to be too expensive for the money that we had. Right? You don't have to. So you don't have to do what everybody's doing. If you identify that, look, my funding is small, right? And then if you look at your competitor and say, oh, you want to enter this business, they are incumbents in this business already, and they are big and everything like that. The way to do it is not to now go and be doing a price war. They will probably strangulate you before you are able to rise, right? So you need to look at your own funding and look at what will be your source of funding. And I know that Jehovah Jireh is with you, is this thing, right? Or do the analysis, check it. Many times, believers don't check these things. They just say, God is with me, God will provide. I know God will provide, but that you became a believer does not mean that you now lose common sense, right? So do the analysis, do your source of funding, check your source of funding and all of that. And then finally, is that you start. After you have identified the gap, you have done the brief research, you have checked if you have what it takes. If you have ticked all these boxes, then what you need to do is to do what? Start. Start by experimentation. Start lean. By all means, start. Many of you are at the point where you have done all of these other things that we have spoken about. The only thing now is to start. Go and start. And let me tell you something. If you don't start, they can put you inside class and teach you how to drive a car. When you enter, you kick. When you kick it, you match clutch. You put in gear 1. You say noted. Step 1. Kick. When you enter the car, you step on clutch. You have not entered gear and the place is a slope and the car starts moving. That's another experience, right? It's a whole they did that one. It's not inside the notes. Yeah, it's not inside the notes. Some of the things you will experience that you will see it, right? So by all means, go and start. Right? So if you have a business idea, you've done all of these things. Tomorrow is Monday, go and start. You say, how do I start? I don't know, start. That's how to start. You start by starting. And when you have started, you know that you have started and you will see where the starting is leading you to. But there's not going to be a good time or a bad time or anything. You just need to go and start. Right? So if you have thought about the lovely business idea that you have done all of these things that you have looked at, right? Then you can go and start. By the grace of God, next month we are going to look at growth hacks. We are going to look at some of the practical steps that you can take, right, to grow your business or to grow your career, right? Those will be real practical steps that you can take, and I'm sure it will be very, very insightful. But take this, what you have learned today in terms of starting a new business, run it against any ideas that you may have, right? To start something, or you probably have started your business and all of that. Run it through these filters. You look at it and look at where the issues may be, and then as you look at it, you find what you need to do to improve on your business. Let's pray. Let's bow our heads and just say, Father, we thank you for everything. We give you glory and we give you praise. Thank you for your word. Thank you for everything. Thank you, Lord Jesus, We praise you, we praise you, we praise you. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Oh, we give you glory and we give you praise. Blessed be your name.